The gunshot that shattered Tabitha Emerson's water bucket 3 days ago still echoed in her nightmares as she climbed the rough wooden ladder into the hay loft, her fingers bleeding and her breath coming in ragged gasps. She had been running for 19 days straight, sleeping in caves and abandoned mine shafts, stealing what little food she could from unattended supply wagons, always looking over her shoulder for the men her father had sent to drag her back to San Francisco, and the marriage she refused. The hay smelled sweet and clean as she collapsed into it, and for the first time since she had fled her father's mansion, Tabitha allowed herself to close her eyes without fear, too exhausted to care that she was trespassing or that the owner of this barn might find her come morning. Isaac Zimmerman woke before dawn like he always did. The September 1882 Colorado morning crisp and cold against his skin as he pulled on his boots and ran his fingers through his shoulder-length dark hair. He was a big man, built from years of hauling timber down the mountain, his shoulders broad enough to fill a doorway, and his arms thick with muscle from splitting wood and wrestling stubborn mules through rocky terrain. At 28 years old, he had been living alone in his cabin 5 miles outside Cripple Creek for the past 6 years, preferring the company of the pine trees and the elk to the noise and chaos of the mining town. He needed to check on his horses before heading up to his timber site, so he grabbed his worn leather jacket and walked across the clearing to the barn, his boots crunching on the frost-covered grass. The horses nickered softly as he entered, and he was reaching for the grain bucket when he heard a soft, almost imperceptible sound coming from above. Isaac froze, his hand moving instinctively to the knife at his belt. Bears sometimes tried to den up in hay lofts before winter, and he had no interest in surprising one. But the sound came again, and this time he recognized it as human, a small whimper, like someone caught in the grip of a nightmare. He climbed the ladder slowly, his eyes adjusting to the dim light filtering through the cracks in the barn walls. What he saw made him stop halfway up. A woman lay curled in his hay, her dark blonde hair matted with dirt and pine needles, her dress torn in a dozen places, and her feet wrapped in what looked like strips of her own petticoat. Even in sleep, her face was tense with fear, and he could see bruises on her arms and a nasty cut on her cheek that looked infected. Isaac finished climbing the ladder and crouched beside her, studying her for a long moment. She was young, probably early 20s, with delicate features that spoke of a life far different from the rough mountain existence he knew. Her hands were raw and blistered, the kind of damage that came from someone unused to physical labor suddenly being forced into it. He reached out and gently touched her shoulder. Tabitha's eyes flew open and she scrambled backward with a scream, her back hitting the barn wall. Her hands came up defensively, and Isaac saw real terror in her green eyes. "Easy now," he said, keeping his voice low and calm. "You are in my barn, but I am not going to hurt you." She stared at him, breathing hard, taking in his size and his rough appearance. He could see her mind working, trying to decide if she should run or fight. But then her eyes rolled back and she swayed, and Isaac lunged forward to catch her before she collapsed. Up close, he could feel how thin she was, nothing but skin and bones beneath the ruined dress. Her forehead burned with fever, and the cut on her cheek was definitely infected. Isaac made a decision in that moment that would change everything. He gathered her into his arms, surprised at how light she was, and carefully descended the ladder. The walk to his cabin was short, and he kicked the door open with his boot, carrying her inside and laying her gently on his bed. It was the only bed in the single-room cabin, but that was a problem for later. Right now, he needed to get her fever down and clean those wounds before they got worse. Isaac had learned basic medicine from an old trapper years ago, enough to keep himself alive when injuries happened miles from the nearest doctor. He built up the fire, set water to boil, and gathered the supplies he would need: clean cloth, whiskey for disinfecting, needle and thread for stitching if necessary, and some willow bark tea for the fever. When he turned back to the bed, her eyes were open again, watching him with a mixture of fear and confusion. "Where am I?" Her voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. "My cabin. About 5 miles outside Cripple Creek, Colorado. I am Isaac Zimmerman. I found you in my hay loft." He kept his movements slow and deliberate as he approached with a cup of water. "You need to drink this." She tried to sit up, winced, and accepted the cup with shaking hands. "I need to go. They will find me. I cannot stay here. You are not going anywhere with that fever." Isaac pulled a chair beside the bed and sat down, trying to make himself seem less intimidating. Hard to do when you stood 6'4" and had the build of a grizzly bear. "Who is looking for you?" Tabitha's eyes filled with tears and she looked away. "Men my father hired. Bounty hunters, I think. He wants to force me to marry Calvin Ashworth. He is 43 years old and I have heard the rumors about what happened to his first wife. I told my father I would not do it, that I would rather die, but he locked me in my room and said the wedding would happen whether I agreed or not." The words came out in a rush, like she had been holding them in for too long. "I escaped through the window and I have been running ever since." That was 19 days ago. Isaac felt anger burn hot in his chest. He had no patience for men who treated women like property. 19 days. From where? San Francisco. She met his eyes again, and he saw determination there beneath the fear. "I stole a horse the first night and rode east. When it went lame near Sacramento, I walked. I hid in a freight wagon heading through the Sierras, then kept moving. I just kept moving, always east, trying to put as much distance between me and them as possible." That explained the condition of her feet and hands. She had crossed the Sierras on foot, probably the most dangerous mountain range in the West. The fact that she was alive was remarkable. The fact that she had made it all the way to Colorado was nothing short of a miracle. "What is your name?" he asked. "Tabitha Emerson." She paused. "3 days ago they found me near a creek. One of them shot at me. The bullet hit my water bucket instead. I ran into the forest and I think I lost them, but I cannot be sure." Isaac stood and tested the water. It was warm enough. He poured some into a basin and brought it back with clean cloths. "That cut on your cheek needs cleaning and your feet probably need attention too. Are you hurt anywhere else?" Tabitha shook her head, but he saw her hand move unconsciously to her ribs, probably bruised from a fall or from being grabbed. "I can take care of it myself. You can barely sit up." Isaac dipped the cloth in the water and wrung it out. "I will be gentle, but that infection needs to be treated or the fever will get worse." She hesitated, then nodded. Isaac moved closer and carefully began cleaning the cut on her cheek. She flinched but did not pull away, and he worked as gently as his large hands would allow. The wound was not deep, but it was definitely infected. He would need to use whiskey to clean it properly. "This is going to hurt," he warned, reaching for the bottle. Tabitha gripped the blanket. "I understand." The whiskey made her gasp and tears streamed down her face, but she did not cry out. Isaac worked quickly, cleaning the wound thoroughly before moving on to the smaller cuts on her hands. Her feet were worse, blistered, cut, and swollen. He cleaned them carefully, applied some salve he had made from pine pitch and herbs, and wrapped them in clean bandages. By the time he finished, Tabitha was shaking with exhaustion. Isaac gave her willow bark tea for the fever and some dried venison and hardtack, which she ate slowly, like someone who had not had a proper meal in weeks. "You should sleep," he said, standing and pulling the blanket up over her. You are safe here. No one knows about this cabin except me and the occasional trapper. Where will you sleep? She asked, her eyelids already drooping. I have a bedroll. I will be fine by the fire. He watched as she fought to stay awake, clearly not trusting him yet. Rest, Tabitha. We can talk more when you are feeling better. She was asleep before he finished speaking, her breathing evening out as the willow bark tea began to work. Isaac stood there for a moment, looking down at this woman who had literally fallen into his life. She was beautiful, even dirty and injured, with a strength that impressed him. To cross the Sierras alone, on foot, with bounty hunters chasing her, that took courage most men did not have. He turned away and busied himself with his morning chores, checking on the horses, chopping more firewood, and making a proper stew for when she woke up. His mind kept drifting back to her story. Part of him wanted to tell her to move on as soon as she was well enough, to not bring her problems to his doorstep. But a larger part of him, the part that had been raised by a mother who taught him to protect those who could not protect themselves, knew he could not turn her away. Tabitha slept through the entire day and into the night. Isaac dozed by the fire, waking every few hours to check on her fever and make sure she was still breathing. By morning, the fever had broken and she woke looking more alert. "How long did I sleep?" she asked, struggling to sit up. "Almost a full day." Isaac ladled some stew into a bowl and brought it to her. "Eat this. You need your strength." The stew was simple venison, potatoes, carrots, and onions, but Tabitha ate it like it was the finest meal she had ever tasted. Isaac watched her, nursing his own bowl, and waited for her to speak. "Thank you," she said finally, setting the empty bowl aside. "You did not have to help me." "Yes, I did." Isaac met her eyes. "What is your plan now?" Tabitha looked down at her bandaged hands. "I do not know. I thought if I could just get far enough away they would give up looking. But my father is a wealthy man and Calvin Ashworth is even wealthier. They will keep searching." She looked up, and he saw fear creeping back into her expression. "I cannot go back. I would rather die than marry that man." "You are not going to die, and you are not going back." The words came out before Isaac could stop them, but once they were spoken, he realized he meant them. "You can stay here until you figure out what to do next. I cannot ask you to do that. If they find me here, they might hurt you too." Isaac almost laughed. "I would like to see them try." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the mountain peaks in the distance. "I have been alone up here for 6 years. Came here after my mother died because I did not fit well with civilized society. Too big, too rough, too quick with my fists when I saw injustice. Up here, none of that matters. I cut timber, hunt my food, and live on my own terms." He turned back to face her. "But I know what it is like to want freedom. I will not take that away from you." Tabitha's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they looked like tears of relief. "I can work. Once my feet heal, I can help with chores, cook, clean. I do not want to be a burden." "You are not a burden." Isaac sat back down, aware of how small she looked in his big bed. "But I will take you up on the help once you are feeling better. For now, just rest and heal." Over the next week, Tabitha grew stronger. Her fever stayed away, the cuts began to heal, and she could walk around the cabin without wincing. Isaac found himself looking forward to their conversations in the evening after he returned from the timber site. She was educated, well-read, and had a sharp wit that made him laugh, something he had not done much of in recent years. He learned that she was 22 years old, the only child of a railroad magnate who viewed her as nothing more than a bargaining chip to increase his wealth and social standing. She had been raised by tutors and governesses, taught to be the perfect society wife, but she had always dreamed of something more, of seeing the world beyond San Francisco's gilded ballrooms, of making her own choices. Tabitha learned that Isaac had grown up in St. Louis, the son of a seamstress who had raised him alone after his father died in a riverboat accident. He had worked on the docks as a young man, using his size and strength to load cargo, but he had gotten into too many fights defending workers who were being cheated or mistreated. After his mother died when he was 22, he had headed west, eventually settling in these Colorado mountains where he could live by his own rules. They danced around the growing attraction between them, both aware of it, but neither willing to acknowledge it yet. Isaac told himself she was just recovering, that she needed a protector, not a suitor. Tabitha told herself she had just escaped one forced marriage and should not be thinking about any man, even one as kind and strong as Isaac. But feelings have a way of growing whether you want them to or not. It was early October when the first real test came. Isaac had gone into Cripple Creek for supplies, leaving Tabitha alone at the cabin for the first time. She had insisted she would be fine, that she could not hide forever, and he had reluctantly agreed, showing her where he kept his rifle and making sure she knew how to use it. He was loading supplies onto his mule in front of the general store when he overheard two rough-looking men talking. Heard from Pete that they are looking for some runaway girl, rich family back in California, $500 reward for information leading to her whereabouts. Isaac's blood ran cold. He kept his head down, pretending to adjust the ropes on his packs. 500. Hell, for that kind of money, I would search every cabin in these mountains, the second man said. They have got a description. Young, blonde hair, green eyes, probably traveling alone. Father wants her back real bad. Seems she ran off to avoid getting married. Isaac forced himself to finish loading the mule slowly, casually, before leading it away from the store. His mind raced. $500 was more money than most men in Cripple Creek would see in 2 years. If word got out that a woman matching Tabitha's description was staying at his cabin, there would be men lining up to collect that reward. He needed to get back to her now. The ride back took an hour, and Isaac pushed the mule as fast as he dared on the mountain trails. When the cabin came into view, he saw Tabitha standing outside, the rifle in her hands, pointing it at 3 men on horses. Isaac spurred the mule forward, his hand going to the pistol at his hip. As he got closer, he could see that the men were not bounty hunters, they were local prospectors he recognized from town. But they were looking at Tabitha with the kind of calculation that meant they had heard about the reward. "Afternoon, Zimmerman," one of them called out as Isaac rode up. "Did not know you had company." "She is my wife," Isaac said, the lie coming easily as he dismounted and moved to stand beside Tabitha. "Just arrived from St. Louis last week." The man's eyes narrowed. "Funny, you never mentioned getting married. Did not see how it was any of your business." Isaac let his hand rest visibly on his pistol. "Now, is there something you needed, or are you just out here harassing my wife?" The 3 men exchanged glances. Isaac was known in the area as someone you did not cross, not because he went looking for trouble, but because he could end it quickly when it came to him. The prospectors were greedy, but they were not stupid. "No trouble, Zimmerman. Just surprised to see you had gotten hitched is all." The lead man tipped his hat. "Congratulations." They rode away, but Isaac knew it would not be the end of it. Word would spread that he had a woman at his cabin and questions would be asked. He turned to Tabitha, who had lowered the rifle but still looked shaken. "Are you all right?" he asked. She nodded. "They just showed up about 20 minutes ago, said they were passing through and saw smoke from the chimney. I did not trust them. You were right not to." Isaac took the rifle from her and guided her back into the cabin. "There is a reward out for you, $500. I heard men talking about it in town." The color drained from Tabitha's face. "They found me." "Not yet, but they are looking." Isaac set the rifle by the door and took her hands in his, struck again by how small and delicate they seemed compared to his own work-roughened palms. "I told those men you are my wife. The story will spread and it might buy us some time, but we need to think about what to do next. I should leave. I have put you in danger." Tabitha tried to pull her hands away, but Isaac held on gently. "You are not going anywhere. You are still recovering, and you would not last a week out there alone with winter coming." He paused, searching for the right words. "But the wife story, it might actually work. If people think you are my wife, newly arrived from back east, they will have less reason to connect you to the runaway heiress from California. You would do that. Lie for me. I would do more than that." Isaac realized he still held her hands and reluctantly let go. "We could make it real. Get married, I mean. It would give you legal protection. They could not force you to go back to California if you were married to someone else." Tabitha stared at him. "Isaac, I cannot ask you to marry me just to protect me. That is not fair to you. Who said you were asking? I am offering." He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly nervous. "Look, I know we have only known each other for 2 weeks. I know this is not how things are supposed to happen, but I like having you here. I like talking to you in the evenings. I like the sound of your laugh and the way you are not afraid to argue with me when you think I am wrong." He took a breath. "I am not saying it has to be a real marriage right away. We could make it legal for protection and then see what happens. No pressure." Tabitha's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You would marry me, a stranger who brought nothing but trouble to your door. You are not a stranger anymore." Isaac cupped her face gently, careful of the healing cut on her cheek. "And you are not trouble. You are brave and strong and kind, and any man would be lucky to have you as his wife." The kiss happened before either of them quite planned it. Tabitha rose on her tiptoes. Isaac leaned down, and their lips met in a soft, tentative touch that sent warmth flooding through both of them. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "Is that a yes?" Isaac asked, his voice rough. Tabitha nodded, a smile breaking across her face. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." They rode into Cripple Creek the next morning, Isaac on his horse and Tabitha riding the mule, wearing a dress that Isaac had bought for her in town, simple calico, but clean and whole. The justice of the peace was a crusty old man named Horace, who had been performing marriages and settling disputes in Cripple Creek since the town was founded in 1879. "You sure about this, Zimmerman?" Horace asked, looking between the massive mountain man and the delicate young woman beside him. "Marriage is not something to rush into, I am sure." Isaac took Tabitha's hand. "We both are." The ceremony was quick and simple. Isaac and Tabitha spoke the vows, exchanged a ring that Isaac bought from the general store, and signed the marriage certificate. When Horace pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac kissed Tabitha again, longer this time, and felt something in his chest that he had not felt in years' hope. They bought more supplies with what little money Isaac had saved, including fabric so Tabitha could make herself some proper clothes and ingredients for better meals. Several people stopped them on the street to congratulate Isaac on his marriage and meet his new wife. Tabitha smiled and played her part perfectly, inventing a story about being a widow from St. Louis who had answered Isaac's advertisement for a mail-order bride. It was not until they were riding back up the mountain that Tabitha finally relaxed. "You think they believed us?" "Enough of them, probably. And even if they suspect something, being married makes it harder for anyone to claim you." Isaac glanced over at her. "How are you feeling about all this? Terrified, grateful, confused?" Tabitha laughed a little wildly. "I just married a man I have known for 2 weeks. This is insane. Completely insane," Isaac agreed, "but I do not regret it." "I do not either." Tabitha smiled at him, and Isaac felt that warmth in his chest again. When they reached the cabin, Isaac realized they were going to have to address the sleeping arrangements. "I can build a partition," he offered, "give you some privacy." "Isaac." Tabitha touched his arm. "We are married, it is all right." He looked down at her, seeing the nervousness beneath the brave words. "We do not have to rush anything. The marriage is legal either way. I know. But I also know that I trust you, and I think I am starting to have real feelings for you," she blushed. "Is that foolish? To fall for someone so quickly?" Isaac pulled her into his arms, marveling at how perfectly she fit against his chest despite their size difference. "If it is foolish, then I am a fool too. I have been falling for you since I found you in my hay loft." That night, they shared the bed as husband and wife, Isaac holding Tabitha close and feeling like the luckiest man in Colorado. She fell asleep with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, and for the first time since she fled San Francisco, she felt truly safe. The next few weeks fell into a comfortable rhythm. Isaac would wake before dawn, build up the fire, and head out to his timber site. Tabitha would spend the day cooking, mending clothes, and making the cabin more of a home. She revealed a talent for gardening, even this late in the season, and managed to coax some late vegetables from a small plot she cleared behind the cabin. In the evenings, they would eat together, talk about their days, and slowly learn more about each other. Isaac taught Tabitha how to shoot properly, how to identify animal tracks, and how to read the weather in the mountains. Tabitha taught Isaac about books and poetry, subjects he had little education in, and helped him with the reading and writing that had always been a struggle for him. And every night, they grew closer. The tentative touches became more confident. The soft kisses became passionate. They fell in love the way people do when they are isolated from the world completely, intensely, without reservation. But the outside world would not stay away forever. It was late October when the bounty hunters finally found them. Isaac was returning from checking his trap lines when he saw 3 horses tied outside his cabin. His heart stopped, and he broke into a run, drawing his pistol as he burst through the door. 3 men stood inside, guns drawn, with Tabitha backed against the far wall. She was holding Isaac's hunting knife, her knuckles white around the handle, defiance blazing in her eyes. "Let her go," Isaac growled, leveling his pistol at the nearest man. The leader, a scarred man in an expensive coat, turned to face him. "Isaac Zimmerman, I presume. We have no quarrel with you. We are just here to collect Miss Emerson and return her to her father." "Mrs. Zimmerman," Isaac corrected, "and she is not going anywhere." The bounty hunter's eyes narrowed. "Her father said she might try something like a fake marriage. It will not hold up. We have legal authority to take her back to California." "Show me your warrant." Isaac kept his gun steady. The man reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. Isaac took it carefully, keeping his weapon trained on the other 2 men, and scanned the contents. It was signed by a judge in San Francisco, authorizing the return of Tabitha Emerson to her father's custody. "This is only valid in California," Isaac said, letting the paper fall to the floor. "Colorado does not recognize it, and she is not Tabitha Emerson anymore. She is Tabitha Zimmerman, my legal wife, as registered with the territory. You have no authority here. Her father will pay $10,000 for her return," the scarred man said. "That is more money than you will see in your lifetime, mountain man. Walk away now, and we will give you $500 just for your trouble." Isaac saw Tabitha flinch at the mention of the money, saw her doubt that he would choose her over such a fortune. He met her eyes across the room and saw everything he needed to see their fear, hope, and love. "I am going to give you 3 seconds to get out of my cabin," Isaac said quietly. 1. The scarred man's hand moved toward his gun. "Do not be a fool." 2. There are 3 of us and only one of you, another bounty hunter pointed out. Isaac smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. I counted. 3. What happened next was fast and brutal. The scarred man went for his gun, and Isaac shot him in the shoulder before he could clear leather. The second man lunged forward, and Isaac met him with a punch that lifted the man off his feet and sent him crashing into the table. The third man grabbed for Tabitha, and she drove the hunting knife into his arm with a scream. Isaac was on the third man in an instant, yanking him away from Tabitha and throwing him against the wall hard enough to rattle the entire cabin. The man slid to the floor, unconscious. The one Isaac had punched was groaning and not getting up. The scarred leader was clutching his bleeding shoulder, his gun on the floor. Get out, Isaac said, his voice like ice. And tell Tabitha's father that if he sends anyone else, I will not be so merciful. The bounty hunters stumbled out of the cabin, 2 of them supporting the third. Isaac watched until they had mounted their horses and ridden away, then turned to Tabitha. She was shaking, the knife still in her hand. It is over, he said gently, taking the knife and setting it aside before pulling her into his arms. You are safe. Tabitha buried her face in his chest and started to cry great, heaving sobs that shook her entire body. Isaac held her through it, murmuring reassurances, his large hand stroking her hair. You chose me, she finally said, her voice muffled against his shirt. They offered you so much money and you chose me. I will always choose you. Isaac tilted her face up so she could see the truth in his eyes. Money means nothing compared to you. You are my wife, Tabitha, my love. Nothing will ever change that. She kissed him then, desperately, pouring all her fear and relief and love into it. Isaac kissed her back just as fiercely, and when they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I love you, Tabitha said. I know it is fast and probably crazy, but I love you, Isaac Zimmerman. I love you too. Isaac rested his forehead against hers. And it is not crazy, it is the sanest thing I have ever felt. They spent the rest of the day reinforcing the cabin's defenses, just in case the bounty hunters decided to come back with reinforcements. But as the days passed with no sign of them, Isaac began to believe they had actually given up. The shoulder wound would have slowed them down, and word would spread that trying to take Tabitha from Isaac was a good way to get hurt. November brought the first serious snows, and Isaac taught Tabitha how to survive a mountain winter. They spent long hours together by the fire, reading, talking, and making love. Tabitha discovered that, beneath Isaac's rough exterior, was a gentle, thoughtful man who treated her like she was precious. Isaac discovered that Tabitha had a wild side that she had never been allowed to express in San Francisco. She loved the mountains, loved the freedom, and loved him with a fierce passion that matched his own. Christmas came, and they celebrated alone in their cabin, exchanging simple gifts. Isaac gave Tabitha a carved wooden box he had made to hold her few possessions. Tabitha gave Isaac a shirt she had sewn from fabric she had bought in town, embroidered with his initials. They cooked a special meal, drank whiskey, and danced to music only they could hear. Are you happy? Isaac asked as they swayed together in the firelight. Happier than I have ever been in my life. Tabitha looked up at him with shining eyes. I thought running away meant giving up everything. I never imagined I would find you. I was just existing before you came, Isaac admitted. Going through the motions. You made me want to live again. As winter deepened, they settled into their new life together. January 1883 was particularly harsh, with blizzards that kept them trapped in the cabin for days at a time, but they did not mind. They had each other, plenty of supplies, and a love that grew stronger with each passing day. It was in early February that Tabitha realized she had missed her monthly courses. She did not say anything at first, not wanting to worry Isaac until she was sure. But when another week passed and she started feeling nauseated in the mornings, she knew. "Isaac," she said one evening as they sat by the fire, "I need to tell you something." He looked up from the trap he was repairing, concern crossing his face. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong." "At least I do not think so." Tabitha took a deep breath. "I think I am pregnant." Isaac stared at her for a long moment, then a slow smile spread across his face. "Pregnant? You are sure?" "Not completely, but fairly certain. All the signs are there." She searched his expression anxiously. "Are you happy about it?" Isaac crossed the room in 2 strides and swept her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. "Happy? Tabitha, I am beyond happy. A baby, our baby." Tabitha laughed, relief flooding through her. "I was worried you might think it was too soon." "Too soon? We are married. We love each other. This is perfect." Isaac set her down carefully, suddenly treating her like she was made of glass. "You need to rest more and eat more. We should go to town and see if there is a midwife." "Isaac, I am pregnant, not dying." But Tabitha was smiling, touched by his concern. "I will be fine. Women have babies all the time." Still, Isaac insisted on doing more of the heavy work around the cabin, and he made a special trip to Cripple Creek to consult with the local midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Chen, who had delivered half the babies in the territory. She agreed to check on Tabitha once a month and be present for the birth when the time came. As spring arrived and the snow began to melt, Tabitha's pregnancy became more obvious. Isaac built a proper cradle, spending hours carving intricate designs into the wood. Tabitha sewed baby clothes from soft fabric and prepared the cabin for their new arrival. It was late April when the letter arrived. Isaac had gone into town for supplies and returned with an envelope addressed to Mrs. Tabitha Zimmerman. The return address was San Francisco. Tabitha's hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a short letter in handwriting she recognized as her father's. "Tabitha," it read, "I have received word that you are married and expecting a child. While I am disappointed that you chose to defy me, I acknowledge that your marriage is legal and binding. Calvin Ashworth has married another woman, so that matter is closed. I do not ask for your forgiveness, as I know I do not deserve it, but I want you to know that I have established a trust in your name. The funds will be available to you should you ever need them. I wish you well. Your father, Marcus Emerson." Tabitha read the letter twice, trying to process what it meant. Her father was giving up. He was acknowledging her marriage. He was even giving her money, though she had no intention of touching it. "It is over," she said, looking up at Isaac with wonder. "He is letting me go." Isaac pulled her into his arms. "You are free." They burned the letter together, watching the paper curl and blacken in the fireplace. Whatever life Tabitha had left behind in San Francisco was truly gone now. Her life was here with Isaac in these mountains. Their son was born on a hot July day, with Mrs. Chen attending and Isaac pacing anxiously outside the cabin. The labor was long and difficult, and Isaac wore a path in the dirt listening to Tabitha's cries. But when Mrs. Chen finally called him inside and placed the tiny, squirming bundle in his arms, all the fear melted away. "A boy," Mrs. Chen announced. "Healthy lungs, good strong heartbeat. Congratulations." Isaac looked down at his son in awe. The baby had Tabitha's delicate features but Isaac's dark hair. His tiny hand wrapped around Isaac's finger with surprising strength. "What should we name him?" Isaac asked, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed where Tabitha lay exhausted but smiling. "I was thinking Thomas," Tabitha said softly, "after my mother. She died when I was young, but I remember that she was kind and gentle. I would like to honor her. Thomas Zimmerman." Isaac tested the name and nodded. "I like it." Thomas was a good baby, healthy and strong with his father's size and his mother's temperament. Isaac proved to be a devoted father, rising in the night to walk with the baby when he cried, carving toys, and singing off-key lullabies. Tabitha watched her rough mountain man transform into the gentlest of fathers and fell in love with him all over again. The years that followed were good ones. They had 2 more children, a daughter they named Sarah in 1885, and another son they named James in 1887. The cabin was expanded to accommodate the growing family, with Isaac building additional rooms and a proper loft for the children. Cripple Creek grew as well, becoming a major mining center after gold was discovered in 1891. But Isaac and Tabitha preferred their life on the mountain, away from the chaos of the boom town. They made occasional trips down for supplies and to let the children attend the small school that had been established, but they always returned to their cabin with relief. Tabitha never regretted her decision to run. Sometimes, in quiet moments, she would think about the life she had left behind the grand house, the servants, the fancy dresses, and feel nothing but gratitude that she had escaped. She had found something infinitely more valuable in these Colorado mountains: freedom, purpose, and a love that sustained her through all the challenges of frontier life. Isaac, for his part, considered finding Tabitha in his hay loft the greatest blessing of his life. She had transformed his lonely existence into a home filled with laughter and love. He watched his children grow strong and healthy, taught his sons to hunt and track, and helped his daughter learn to ride. And every night, he fell asleep with Tabitha in his arms, grateful for the day she had stumbled into his life. One evening in the summer of 1895, as they sat on the porch watching their children play in the meadow, Tabitha leaned against Isaac's shoulder. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not found me that morning?" she asked. Isaac wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "Sometimes. But then I realize it does not matter. Somehow, some way, I think we would have found each other. We were meant to be together." "You really believe that?" "I do." Isaac kissed the top of her head. "You ran for weeks, crossed mountains and deserts, and ended up in my hay loft of all places. That is not coincidence. That is fate." Tabitha smiled. "I like that idea. That all the running, all the fear, all the hardship, it was leading me to you. And I was waiting here the whole time, not even knowing what I was waiting for." Isaac watched as Thomas, now 12, helped his younger siblings climb a tree. "We made a good life together, Tabitha, the best life." Tabitha turned to kiss him properly. "I love you, Isaac Zimmerman." "I love you too, Tabitha Zimmerman. Always have, always will." As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the Zimmerman family gathered on the porch for their evening meal. Thomas was growing into a strong young man who already showed signs of inheriting his father's size and strength. Sarah was bright and curious, always asking questions about everything she saw. Little James was adventurous and fearless, constantly keeping his parents on their toes. After dinner, Isaac brought out his fiddle, a skill he had learned from an old trapper and had been practicing over the years. He was not particularly good, but the children did not care. They danced around the porch, laughing and spinning while Tabitha clapped along. Later, after the children were asleep in their loft, Isaac and Tabitha sat together by the fire, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. "I have been thinking," Isaac said. "Thomas is getting old enough to learn the timber business. I thought maybe next year I could start taking him with me, teach him the trade. He would like that." Tabitha traced patterns on Isaac's chest. "He worships you, you know, all of them do. They are good kids. You have done well with them." "We have done well with them," Tabitha corrected. "You are just as much a part of raising them as I am. More, even." I see how gentle you are with Sarah when she has nightmares, how patient you are teaching James to shoot. You are an amazing father, Isaac. I learned from the best. Isaac thought of his own mother, who had worked herself to exhaustion to provide for him. I just want to give them what I had, a childhood full of love. You are giving them so much more than that. Tabitha sat up and looked at him seriously. You are giving them freedom. The freedom to choose their own paths, to live life on their own terms. That is the greatest gift any parent can give. Isaac pulled her back against him. You gave them that gift too. You chose freedom over comfort, over safety. You showed them that sometimes the hardest choices are the right ones. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the crackle of the fire and the occasional hoot of an owl outside. You think they will stay here when they grow up? Tabitha asked. Or will they want to see the world beyond these mountains? I do not know. But whatever they choose, we will support them. Isaac stroked her hair. That is what love is, right? Giving people the freedom to be who they are meant to be, even if it means letting them go, even then. Isaac kissed her forehead. But I hope we have a few more years before we have to worry about that. As autumn approached again, bringing cooler temperatures and the changing of the aspen leaves to gold, the Zimmerman family prepared for winter as they did every year. They harvested the last of the vegetables, smoked meat, and stocked the cabin with supplies. Isaac cut extra firewood, stacking it high against the cabin walls. It was during one of these preparation trips to town that Isaac ran into an unexpected face from the past. He was loading supplies onto his wagon when a well-dressed man approached him. "Excuse me, are you Isaac Zimmerman?" Isaac turned, immediately on guard. The man was in his 50s with graying hair and an expensive suit that marked him as someone with money. "Who is asking?" "My name is Henry Ashworth. I am Calvin Ashworth's younger brother." The man held up his hands in a placating gesture. "I am not here to cause trouble. I just wanted to meet the man who saved a woman from my brother's cruelty." Isaac's hand moved closer to his pistol. "What do you want?" "Just to talk, if you will give me a few minutes of your time." Henry gestured to the hotel across the street. "Perhaps over coffee," against his better judgment, Isaac agreed. They sat in the hotel's small dining room, and Henry ordered coffee for both of them. "My brother was a monster," Henry said without preamble. "He did kill his first wife, though we could never prove it. When I heard he was going to marry Tabitha Emerson, I tried to warn her father, but Marcus would not listen. Money spoke louder than concern for his daughter's safety." Isaac's jaw tightened. "If you knew what kind of man your brother was, why did you not stop him yourself?" "I tried. I cut off all contact with him, publicly denounced him in the papers. But Calvin was powerful and well-connected. No one would act against him without proof." Henry looked down at his coffee. "When I heard that Tabitha had escaped and married a mountain man in Colorado, I was relieved. When I heard how you defended her against bounty hunters, I knew she had found someone worthy of her." "You still have not told me why you are here," Isaac said. "Calvin died last year. Pneumonia. With him gone, I have been trying to make amends for the damage he caused." Henry pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. "This is for Tabitha. It is a portion of the inheritance that should have gone to his first wife's family. I want her to have it with no strings attached. Consider it an apology from the Ashworth family for the hell we put her through." Isaac did not touch the envelope. "We do not need your money." "I am sure you do not, but please take it anyway. Use it for your children's education or save it for emergencies. I just want to know that some good came from all the evil my brother caused." Henry stood. "That is all I came to say. I am glad Tabitha found happiness. Tell her that if you think she will care to hear it." After Henry left, Isaac sat there for a long time, staring at the envelope. Finally, he picked it up and tucked it into his coat. He would let Tabitha decide what to do with it. When he told her about the encounter that evening, Tabitha was quiet for a long time. "I remember Henry," she said finally. "He came to our house once to warn my father about Calvin. My father threw him out." She took the envelope and opened it, her eyes widening at the amount. "This is $5,000. What do you want to do with it?" Isaac asked. Tabitha thought for a moment, then smiled. "I want to save it for the children, for their futures, whatever those may be. If Thomas wants to go to university, or if Sarah wants to travel, or if James wants to start his own business, this could give them opportunities we never had." "That sounds perfect." Isaac pulled her close. "You have a good heart, Tabitha. I learned from the best." She kissed him softly. "Everything good in my life came from the day I stumbled into your hay loft." The years continued to pass in a blur of seasons and milestones. Thomas grew into a fine young man, tall and strong like his father, with a good head for business. At 18, he decided he wanted to study engineering and used part of the Ashworth money to attend school in Denver. He promised to return to help his father with the timber operation, incorporating new techniques he would learn. Sarah became a skilled rider and tracker, able to navigate the mountains as well as any man. She was fierce and independent, reminding Isaac of Tabitha in so many ways. She talked about becoming a teacher, wanting to help educate children in the remote mountain communities. James was the wild one, always seeking adventure. He spent his teenage years learning everything he could about mining and prospecting, determined to find his fortune in the Colorado mountains. Through it all, Isaac and Tabitha remained the constant center of their children's lives. They provided support and guidance without trying to control their children's choices. They showed their children what real love looked like, the kind that weathered hardships, that grew stronger with time, that was built on mutual respect and genuine affection. In 1902, on a crisp September morning much like the one 20 years earlier, Isaac and Tabitha stood together, watching the sunrise from their porch. Their children were grown now. Thomas was married with a child of his own, Sarah was teaching at a school in Leadville, and James was working a claim in the mountains north of Cripple Creek. 20 years, Tabitha said softly. "Can you believe it has been 20 years since I fell asleep in your hay loft?" Isaac wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on top of her head. "Best 20 years of my life, mine too." Tabitha leaned back against him. "I was running from something I feared. I never imagined I would run straight into everything I needed." "You were brave," Isaac said, "to risk everything for your freedom. A lot of women would not have done that." "I did not feel brave. I felt terrified." Tabitha turned in his arms to face him. "But you made me feel safe. From that very first day, even when I did not trust you yet, something in me knew you would not hurt me. Never." Isaac cupped her face in his large, calloused hands. "I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me. Choosing you was the easiest decision I ever made." Tabitha rose on her tiptoes to kiss him. "I love you, Isaac Zimmerman. I loved you when you were a stranger who found me in your barn. I loved you when you offered to marry me to keep me safe. I loved you when you chose me over a fortune. And I love you now, after 20 years of building this life together. I love you too, Tabitha. Always have, always will." Isaac kissed her deeply, pouring 2 decades of love and devotion into it. They stood there on the porch, wrapped in each other's arms as the sun rose higher and painted the world in shades of gold. Behind them, their cabin stood solid and strong, filled with memories of laughter and love. Around them, the mountains stretched endlessly, the same peaks that had witnessed a desperate young woman's flight to freedom and the beginning of a love story that would last a lifetime. The hay loft where it all began was still there, still filled with sweet-smelling hay. Sometimes, on warm summer evenings, Isaac and Tabitha would climb up there together, lying in the hay like they had done in those early days, talking about everything and nothing. It had become their special place, a reminder of where their story began. As winter approached once more, bringing with it the first snows of the season, the Zimmerman home prepared for the holidays. Thomas was bringing his wife and baby daughter to visit. Sarah would be coming home from Leadville for Christmas break. James had promised to take time away from his claim to join the family. Tabitha spent weeks preparing, cooking and baking, making sure the cabin was perfect for their children's homecoming. Isaac chopped extra firewood and made repairs to the expanded cabin, ensuring everyone would be warm and comfortable. Christmas of 1902 was a celebration like no other. The cabin was filled with 4 generations of the family: Isaac and Tabitha, their 3 grown children, Thomas's wife and baby, and even Mrs. Chen, who had delivered all the Zimmerman children and had become like family over the years. They exchanged gifts, told stories, and sang carols. Thomas played his father's old fiddle, having become much better at it than Isaac ever was. Sarah taught little granddaughter Emma to dance. James entertained everyone with tales of his mining adventures. As the evening wound down and the younger generation headed to bed, Isaac and Tabitha found themselves alone by the fire once more, just like they had been so many times over the years. "This is everything I never knew I wanted," Tabitha said, watching the flames dance. "A family, a home, real love. If someone had told me 20 years ago that I would find all this by running away, I would not have believed them." "You did not find it by running away," Isaac corrected gently. "You found it by running toward something, toward freedom, toward the life you deserved. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. You were exactly where you were supposed to be." Tabitha took his hand, threading her fingers through his. "We both were." Isaac raised her hand to his lips and kissed it. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had married Calvin Ashworth?" "No." Tabitha's answer was immediate and firm. "That life is not even worth imagining. This is my life. You, our children, this mountain. This is what I was meant for." "You were meant for so much more than the cage your father tried to put you in," Isaac agreed. "You were meant to be free, wild, happy. I am all those things thanks to you." Tabitha shifted closer, resting her head on his shoulder. "You gave me everything, Isaac. Not just protection and safety, but real partnership. You never tried to control me or tell me what to do. You let me be myself." "That is what love is supposed to be," Isaac said. "Not ownership, but freedom. Not control, but trust. Your father never understood that." "No, he did not. But he gave me one gift, even if he did not mean to." Tabitha looked up at Isaac with a smile. "He made me strong enough to run, and running brought me to you." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of their family sleeping peacefully around them. The baby made small noises in her sleep. Someone snored gently from the loft. The fire crackled and popped. "We did good, did we not?" Isaac asked softly. "Building this life, raising our children, creating something real and lasting. We did better than good." Tabitha kissed his cheek. "We did extraordinary." As the years moved forward, Isaac and Tabitha grew older together, their love deepening with each passing season. Their children flourished, building their own lives while staying connected to the mountain home where they were raised. Thomas became a successful engineer, but always made time to visit and help with the timber business. Sarah's school became known throughout Colorado for its excellence, and she eventually married a fellow teacher and started her own family. James struck gold in his claim and became a prosperous mine owner, but he never forgot the values his parents had instilled in him. Grandchildren came, filling the cabin with noise and laughter during visits. Isaac taught them to track and hunt, just as he had taught their parents. Tabitha taught them to read and think for themselves, passing on the love of learning she had discovered in her own youth. Through it all, through every challenge and triumph, Isaac and Tabitha remained devoted to each other. Their love was the foundation upon which their entire family was built, a testament to the power of choosing freedom over fear, love over obligation. On their 30th anniversary in 1912, their children threw them a celebration in Cripple Creek. The town had grown considerably since that day in 1882, when Isaac and Tabitha had first married, now boasting over 25,000 residents thanks to the gold rush. But the justice of the peace, old Horace, was still alive and insisted on attending. "I married over 300 couples in my time," Horace told the assembled guests, "but I never saw two people more meant for each other than Isaac and Tabitha Zimmerman. The day they came to me, I could see it in their eyes they had found something special." Isaac and Tabitha renewed their vows that day, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and friends. Isaac's hair was more silver than dark now, and Tabitha had lines around her eyes from years of smiling, but their love was as strong as it had been that first day. "30 years ago you found me in your hay loft," Tabitha said during the ceremony, her voice clear and strong. "I was running from something terrible, but I ran straight into something wonderful. You have been my protector, my partner, my best friend, and the love of my life. I would choose you 1,000 times over." Isaac's eyes were suspiciously bright as he responded. "30 years ago, I found the most precious thing I had ever seen sleeping in my barn. You brought light into my solitary life. You gave me a family, a purpose, a reason to be better than I was. You are my heart, Tabitha, today, tomorrow, and always." They kissed as everyone applauded, and in that moment they were not a 60-year-old mountain man and a 52-year-old mother of 3. They were young again, full of hope and love, standing at the beginning of their journey together. The celebration lasted well into the night, with music and dancing and enough food to feed half of Cripple Creek. But eventually, Isaac and Tabitha slipped away, riding back up the mountain to their cabin under a canopy of stars. "Tired?" Isaac asked as they put the horses away. "A little," Tabitha admitted, "but happy, so very happy." They walked to the hay loft together, climbing the ladder more slowly than they once had, and lay down in the hay, looking up at the stars through the cracks in the roof. "You remember that first morning?" Isaac asked, pulling Tabitha close. "I remember being terrified. I remember thinking you were the biggest man I had ever seen. I remember the kindness in your eyes, even when you had every right to throw me out." Tabitha snuggled against him. "I remember the exact moment I started falling in love with you." "When was that?" "When you cleaned my wounds. You were so gentle, so careful, even though your hands were twice the size of mine. I realized then that beneath all that strength was the gentlest soul I had ever known." Isaac kissed the top of her head. "I fell in love with you when you pointed that rifle at those prospectors. You were half-starved, barely recovered, but you were not going to go down without a fight. That is when I knew you were the strongest person I had ever met." They lay there for hours, talking about their life together, remembering the good times and the hard times, the laughter and the tears, all the moments that had brought them to this place. "If you could go back," Isaac asked, "knowing everything that would happen, would you still run?" "In a heartbeat," Tabitha said without hesitation. "Every hardship, every moment of fear, every painful step, it was all worth it to end up here with you." "I am glad you ran," Isaac said. "I am glad you chose freedom. I am glad you fell asleep in my hay loft. I am glad you found me." Tabitha turned to kiss him. "I am glad you chose to help me instead of turning me away. I am glad you loved me." "Always have, always will," Isaac murmured against her lips. As they grew older still, moving into their 60s and 70s, Isaac and Tabitha slowed down but never stopped. They still took walks through the mountains, though shorter ones. They still sat on the porch every evening, watching the sunset. They still climbed to the hay loft on special occasions, though they needed help with the ladder now. Their family continued to grow. More grandchildren came, and eventually great-grandchildren. The cabin that had once been a lonely bachelor's retreat had become the heart of a sprawling, loving family. In 1925, on a warm July day, Isaac and Tabitha celebrated their 70th and 65th birthdays respectively, along with their 43rd wedding anniversary. The entire family gathered 3 children, 9 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren, along with in-laws and close friends. Thomas, now a distinguished engineer in his 50s, gave a toast. "To my parents who showed me what real strength looks like. Not the strength to control or dominate, but the strength to love unconditionally and stand up for what is right." Sarah, a respected educator with silver in her hair, added her own words. "To my parents, who taught me that a woman could be whatever she wanted to be, who showed me that true love is about freedom and choice, not obligation and duty." James, wealthy from his mining ventures but still down to earth, raised his glass. "To my parents, who built something lasting from nothing, who proved that the best things in life are not bought with money but earned through love and hard work." As the sun set on that perfect day, Isaac and Tabitha sat together in their favorite spot on the porch, surrounded by the family they had created. "We did it," Tabitha said softly. "We built something beautiful." "We did," Isaac agreed. "And it all started with you being brave enough to run. And you being kind enough to help a stranger." Isaac took her hand, his grip still strong despite his age. "You were never a stranger. From the moment I saw you in that hay loft, I knew you were meant to be mine. And you were meant to be mine." Tabitha squeezed his hand. "Thank you, Isaac. For everything. For saving me, for loving me, for giving me this incredible life." "Thank you for letting me," Isaac said. "For trusting me, for loving me back, for making my life mean something." They sat there as the stars came out, hand in hand, hearts beating in synchrony after more than 40 years together. Around them, their family laughed and talked, the sound of love and life filling the mountain air. Isaac and Tabitha Zimmerman would live many more years together, each day a blessing, each moment treasured. They would see their great-grandchildren grow, would celebrate more anniversaries, would continue to be the beating heart of their family. And when their time finally came, they would go peacefully, knowing they had lived fully, loved deeply, and created something that would last long after they were gone. Their story would be passed down through generations, the tale of a desperate young woman who ran from tyranny and found freedom, and the gentle giant who gave her not just shelter, but a home, a family, and a love that lasted a lifetime. But for now, on this perfect evening in July 1925, they simply sat together, watching the stars emerge one by one, grateful for the day Tabitha had fallen asleep in Isaac's hay loft and changed both their lives forever. The mountains stood eternal around them, silent witnesses to a love story that had begun in fear and desperation, but had blossomed into something beautiful, enduring, and true. Their legacy would live on in every child who learned to stand up for themselves, in every person who chose freedom over security, in every couple who built their love on mutual respect and genuine affection. The cabin would stand for generations, a monument to what can happen when two souls meant for each other find their way together against all odds. And somewhere, in the hay loft where it all began, the sweet smell of hay would always linger, a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin with a single act of courage and a stranger's kindness.